I drive a lot for work. I'm a sales rep covering a large territory across the Northwest, which means long stretches of highway are just part of my life. I've driven rural Montana roads dozens of times, late at night, in the dark, in the rain, sometimes all three at once. I'm comfortable with it. I know how to stay alert. I know the routes. I'm telling you that because what happened that October night was not me overreacting. I knew something was wrong before I could explain why. It was a Thursday. I had finished a client meeting in a small town about 3 hours from where I lived and was heading home. It was almost 9 in the evening when I got on the main highway. The sky was completely clear, cold, and very dark. Out there, once you leave town, the highway stretches for miles, with almost nothing on either side. About 20 minutes into the drive, I noticed a car pull onto the highway behind me from a side road. I didn't think anything of it. Cars pull onto highways. That's normal. But about 10 minutes later, I glanced in my mirror and the car was still there. Same distance behind me, maybe 8 or 9 car lengths back. Headlights steady. Still nothing alarming. I kept driving. Another 15 minutes passed. The highway had split twice. Once where a road branched off toward a small town to the north, and once at a junction I always took to stay on the main route. Both times, the car behind me stayed with me. By the 40-minute mark, I was paying close attention. There was almost no one else on this road. I had passed maybe 4 or 5 cars going the opposite direction, and one truck that had eventually turned off. But this car, this same set of headlights, had not moved from behind me. Not faster, not slower, just there. I told myself it was probably just someone making the same drive. It's a main highway. People travel it. The fact that they'd taken the same 2 turns meant nothing. I turned up my music and focused on the road. But then I tried something. I slowed down. Not drastically, just enough to drop about 15 miles under the speed limit. The kind of slow that would frustrate a normal driver enough to pass me. The car behind me slowed down too. My hands got tighter on the wheel. I sped back up to normal speed. The car matched me exactly. I changed lanes. The car changed lanes. I was now fully awake in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. My mind was running through options. There was a small town coming up in about 12 miles. I knew it had a gas station and a 24-hour diner. I decided I would pull in there, park directly in front of the diner where it was lit up and visible, and go inside. If this car followed me off the highway, I would call the police. I kept driving. The car stayed with me, exactly the same distance, for 12 more miles. I took the exit. The car took the exit too. I pulled into the diner parking lot directly under the brightest light and parked, left my engine running, doors locked, and watched my mirror. The car pulled into the same parking lot. It parked on the far end, away from the lights, facing my direction. The engine stayed running. The headlights turned off. I called 911. While I was on the phone, the diner door opened and 2 truckers walked out. The second they appeared in the parking lot, the car at the far end pulled forward and drove back toward the highway entrance. Fast, no hesitation. The deputy who arrived 10 minutes later took my description of the car and drove the highway looking for it. He didn't find it. He told me something I've thought about many times since. He said this particular stretch of highway had seen 3 similar reports in the past 2 years. Women driving alone at night, followed for long distances, losing the car only when they stopped somewhere public or populated. None of the cases had been resolved. I don't drive that route alone after dark anymore. I book a motel and leave in the morning. Some habits are worth changing. I want to start by saying that I consider myself a pretty rational person. I don't scare easily. I've traveled alone since I was 22. I've driven through remote areas of the country without a second thought. I'm not the type to read into things that aren't there. What happened at that gas station in Nevada genuinely scared me, and I've turned it over in my mind enough times to know that my instincts were right. This was about 2 years ago. I was on a solo cross-country drive, something I'd always wanted to do, taking the southern route from Georgia to California over about 10 days. I was somewhere in eastern Nevada when I realized I needed gas badly. The next gas station on my map was about 14 miles off the main highway on a 2-lane road. Normally, I would have pushed further, but my tank was low enough that I didn't want to risk it. I took the exit. The gas station was one of those old standalone ones. 2 pumps, a small attached convenience store, fluorescent lights. It was around 7 in the evening, still light outside, but getting golden and dim. dim. There was one other car at the pumps when I pulled in, a dark sedan, older model. A man was standing at the pump next to it. He looked up when I pulled in. I got out, started pumping, and did what I always do, kept my head down, focused on my phone, not making eye contact. But I noticed that the man hadn't started pumping yet. He was just standing there next to his car, not on his phone, not looking at anything in particular, just standing, facing my direction. I finished pumping faster than I usually would, and went inside to pay and use the restroom. The woman at the register was older, friendly, talking about the weather, normal. When I came back outside, I stopped just inside the door. The man's car was still there. He was still standing in the same spot. He hadn't pumped gas. He was looking directly at the store entrance. I stood there for a moment, watching him through the glass door. Then I went back to the register and told the woman I'd forgotten something. I bought a bottle of water, took my time, then asked her casually if she knew the man outside. She glanced through the window, and her expression changed. She said she didn't know him. Then she said, and this is the part that confirmed everything, that he'd been there for about 30 minutes before I arrived. Just standing there, not pumping, not going inside. She let me stay inside for a few minutes. We watched him together from behind the window. After maybe 10 minutes, a pickup truck pulled into the station. 2 large men got out. The moment they did, the man at the pump got into his car and drove away, fast, back toward the highway. The woman behind the register looked at me and said simply, "Good timing." I waited another few minutes before going to my car. I drove back to the main highway, found a busier gas station 30 miles further, and sat in the parking lot for a while before I could make myself get back on the road. I've thought about what would have happened if that truck hadn't pulled in. I've thought about it more times than I'd like to admit. I don't stop at isolated gas stations alone after dark anymore. The extra miles are worth it every single time. I should not have stopped. I know that now. I knew it then. A little that quiet part of the brain that sends a signal you don't always listen to. But I was exhausted, and I had 4 more hours to drive, and I made a decision. I'll spend a long time second-guessing. My name is Claire. I'm a nurse. I was driving home to Nashville after spending a week with my family in North Carolina. It was a Tuesday night, and I had stayed later than I planned. By the time I got on the interstate, it was already past 10. I did well for the first 2 hours. Coffee, music, windows cracked, but somewhere in rural Tennessee, the kind of exhaustion that gets behind your eyes hit me hard and fast. I knew I couldn't push through it safely. There was a rest stop 2 miles ahead. I pulled in. The rest stop was mostly empty. A few trucks parked far down at the end of the lot, the kind that stop overnight. The area near the restrooms was lit up, but the parking lot itself was dim. I pulled into a spot under one of the working lights, put my seat back slightly, set an alarm for 45 minutes, and closed my eyes. I was asleep within minutes. I woke up before my alarm, not from a sound exactly, more from that feeling of being watched that pulls you out of sleep before you know why. My eyes opened, and I lay still for a moment, oriented myself, remembered where I was. Then I looked at my driver's side window. There was a man standing directly outside my car, maybe 2 feet from the glass. He was just standing there, looking in. I didn't move. I don't know if he could tell I was awake. The parking lot light was behind him, which meant his face was partially in shadow, but I could see the shape of him clearly. He was wearing a dark jacket and had his hands in his pockets. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't moving, just standing there, looking into my car. My phone was in my hand. I'd fallen asleep holding it. I moved only my thumb, unlocked it, and opened my recent calls. My sister's number was at the top. I called her. When the screen lit up and she answered, the man outside stepped back, just 1 step. He didn't leave. He just moved back slightly and turned so he was facing away from my car, like he was just a person standing in a parking lot. My sister asked what was wrong. I told her there was a man standing next to my car at a rest stop, and I needed her to stay on the phone with me. She stayed on. I started my car, still on the phone speaker on the seat, and pulled forward. As I did, I saw him turn and watch me leave. He walked back toward a dark pickup truck, parked 2 spots away, and just stood next to it, watching my car until I turned out of the lot. I drove for 45 minutes before I felt safe enough to pull into a lit parking lot off the highway and sit for a while. My sister looked up the rest stop when we hung up. In a local Facebook group for that county, she found a post from 8 months earlier, a woman describing almost the exact same experience. A man standing outside her car window at that same rest stop, She'd had a dog with her that started barking, which woke her up. I don't think I was the first, and I don't think I was the last. I don't sleep in rest stops anymore. If I'm too tired to drive, I find a motel, a real door with a real lock. After that night, the cost of a motel room stopped being something I debate. That's everything for tonight. If something happened to you that you can't explain, something that still stays with you, send it to the email in the description. I read every single one. Stay safe, stay aware, and whatever you do, don't look back.